Finalmente, así es como se hace. Los demócratas en la Cámara y el Senado interrogando al director de la Oficina de Administración y Presupuesto de Donald Trump y autor del proyecto 2025, Rogue Vote, después de que Vogt hubiera esquivado cualquier audiencia en el Congreso desde el inicio del mandato de Donald Trump. Finalmente vino a testificar y llegó preparado para simplemente soltar sus argumentos de maga y decir: Donald Trump es el rey de la asequibilidad. Miren qué bien lo tiene el pueblo estadounidense. Los precios están bajando, las cosas son increíbles. Bueno, ese es su guión, pero afortunadamente los demócratas lo sacaron de ese guión y comenzaron a realizar un interrogatorio increíble, exponiendo realmente qué ser humano tan despreciable es y haciéndolo lucir bastante patético durante su testimonio. Primero quiero mostrarles los puntos de discusión que intentaba soltar por un breve momento, para que vean cómo empezó y luego, ¡boom!, los demócratas entraron con fuerza. Miren, lo que hemos visto es una explosión de asequibilidad. El autor y arquitecto del proyecto 2025 diciendo esto ahora mismo, cuando los estadounidenses no pueden pagar nada. Y me refiero a combustible, gasolina, comestibles, alquiler. La gente está luchando día tras día. La inflación no para de surgir y esto es lo que dijo el arquitecto de maga del proyecto 2025. Miren, por favor.
This particular budget committee has not. They have been successful in conjunction with the President of the United States. I hope that continues. We're in the midst of passing we passed the extension of the President's tax cuts. Many of those were aimed at working class individuals. They're now going through their first season of seeing what changes that will make on their bottom line. And I think that's going to lead to an explosion in affordability for the American people.
Luego la congresista demócrata Palint entró y dijo: mire, me parece bastante obvio que toda su estrategia aquí es vengarse de los estados azules, los demócratas, y de cualquiera que no vote por Donald Trump. Usted está usando su posición como director de la Oficina de Administración y Presupuesto para castigarlos e intentar infligir un poco de dolor. Observen cómo intenta escabullirse y ella no se lo permite. Miren, por favor.
$7.6 billion in clean energy grants based on whether the recipient lived in a blue state. Yes or no?
I don't recall what that judge said, but we have not made the determinations based on whether the state is...
In fact, Mr. Vogt, on January 12th, 2026, U.S. Judge ADMITE said, quote, defendants, meaning you, Mr. Vogt, freely admit that they made grant determination decisions primarily, if not exclusively, based on whether the awardee resided in a state whose citizens voted for President Trump in 2024. Mr. Vogt, yes or no? Federal judges said OMB's freeze of $10 billion in child care and family assistance funding, quote, appeared designed to punish communities that the administration agreed with. Yes or no? Was that something that federal judges said about you and your leadership?
I think the judge's characterization is getting at the degree to which we are focused on states that we think are mismanaged.
Okay, that is not in fact the case. In fact, U.S. District Judge Trina Thompson found the administration broke the law and froze funds as a politically motivated move disguised as fraud prevention. So your characterization actually is false. Other courts have said that withholding congressionally approved funding is, quote, vindictive and unlawful. Courts have found that freezing funds create, quote, irreparable harm against the American people. And the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, the watchdog agency that investigates how federal agencies spend taxpayer dollars, has reported that you broke the law multiple times. And they have said that you have refused to spend money that was dedicated for Americans. The Constitution gives Congress the power to spend money and not the president. Mr. Vogt, your actions clearly show that you want to cut federal funds from anyone who didn't vote for Donald Trump. Are you trying to get revenge on states that did not vote for your boss?
No, of course not. What's interesting about the question is that Joe Biden withheld.
Oh, for goodness sakes, can we please bring it back to my question? It was a yes or no question. Are you trying to get revenge against blue states because they did not support the president? Courts have said that, in fact, you did do that. That, in fact, you are being vindictive. In fact, you are punishing because of political persuasions. It's not members of Congress who suffer when you do an end run around Congress. That's not what I'm angry about. It's not about you taking the power away from us. It's that it's their money. It's their power. Of the people, by the people, and for the people. The House is closest to the people. So when you do an end run around Congress, you're taking Americans' power.
Te hago esta breve pausa para recordarte que si quieres aprender a llevar tus finanzas, quieres saber cómo ahorrar, cómo invertir y cómo mejorar tu vida financiera día tras día, te recomiendo que revises mi canal de finanzas personales en el que yo todos los días me enfoco en darte consejos financieros de cómo ahorrar, cómo invertir y cómo mejorar tu estabilidad económica sin decirte mentiras y explicándote todo lo más fácil posible. Así que si quieres mejorar tu futuro financiero completamente gratis y de la forma más resumida posible, te aconsejo que te des una vuelta por el canal de José Alvarado Finanzas. Por si desean darse una vuelta por el canal de finanzas, el link va a estar en la descripción. Y ahora sí, amigos, continúen viendo la noticia. A continuación les voy a mostrar al senador demócrata Merkley, quien dice: ¿por qué no nos dice qué tan cara ha sido esta guerra en Irán? ¿Conoce las cifras? ¿Sabe cuánto dinero Estados Unidos ha gastado? Díganos. Ese es su papel. Usted es literalmente el director de la Oficina de Administración y Presupuesto. ¿Qué tan cara es la guerra? El pueblo estadounidense exige saberlo. Y adivinen qué, Roosevelt se quedó congelado. Ni siquiera sabía cómo responder. No lo sé, no puedo decirte cuánto es, responde. Miren, por favor.
Would I be in the ballpark to say we've already spent at least $50 billion?
I wouldn't want to make a characterization of that at this point.
Okay. I would say, as the most knowledgeable person in the executive branch of the budget, I would expect you to have pretty good numbers on that. So I'm a little disappointed in that answer.
La siguiente es la senadora demócrata Murray. Esto es lo que tuvo que decir. Miren el clip, por favor.
You and President Trump are asking for $450 billion in new defense spending. To be clear, that is the largest increase since World War II, and that does not include money that you reportedly still plan to request for the war in Iran. What is the total dollar amount requested for defense spending in FY27, including annual appropriations and reconciliation funds?
1.5 trillion, Senator, a combination between the appropriations and the mandatory. We are trying to increase the amount that you would fund through the appropriations, but we don't want the full increase to have to be borne in the appropriations process.
So $1.5 trillion. What is the total dollar amount requested for non-defense spending?
$660 billion.
Okay, and what is the overall cut to non-defense programs that you're
10%,
proposing?
$70 billion.
$70 billion. We look at that as about $81 billion, frankly. So let me just say this, Director Vogt, you count yourself as a spending hawk. And here you are arguing for a gob-smacking $1.5 trillion defense budget. I read that you disagreed with the president on that $1.5 trillion request, warning him that it would explode the deficit. Did you warn the president or administration officials that spending this much on defense would explode the deficit?
Senator, I fully support this budget.
Bien, estas son las personas que se refieren a sí mismas como soy el halcón fiscal, soy un halcón, el halcón. ¿Cuántas veces he escuchado esto de soy el halcón del déficit? No lo eres. Son un montón de fraudes. Eso es lo que son. 1.5 billones para el ejército, un aumento del 40% respecto, claro, al año anterior y como un aumento del 90% respecto como hace aproximadamente 3 años. ¿Qué demonios está pasando? A continuación, tenemos a la congresista demócrata Coleman y por favor presten atención. Miren.
What would you say right now to the mothers of the kids who died because of your dismantling of U.S. aid? Harvard study says there are more than 100,000 of them. Can you give me a quick response to what you would say to those mothers? Just don't talk to me about the study. Talk to me about what you would say to the mothers of the children who died.
Congresswoman, with great respect, I would just contest that the extent to which institutions that benefit from federal largesse put out studies that say that the world has ended, that the world has not in fact ended.
Well, it's going
we
there.
only cut
If you're not going to answer the
USAID spending
question,
last year to the tune of about $8 billion. There was far more that we could have done.
Luego tenemos al senador demócrata Kane entrando con un gran interrogatorio. Miren, por favor.
There's been some discussion about the bill that the DHS funding bill that the Senate passed unanimously now twice. The House, the votes are there in the House to pass it. The leadership will not take it up. You were before the House yesterday. Did you encourage the House to finally pass the DHS bill?
My interaction, we want the bill passed. My interactions yesterday were to remind
okay,
one side of the aisle.
But you do want the bill passed.
We want the bill passed.
Did you say that during the hearing yesterday?
I wasn't asked it.
Well, you said a lot of things during the hearing. If it was a priority for the administration.
In response to Democratic politicians that were saying that we were responsible for the shutdown.
Hold on.
Our shutdown?
Hold on. You had the opportunity to tell the House yesterday to pass a bill that you say you support, that 100% of the Senate supports, and you didn't bring it up. That's fascinating.
Senator, you had the opportunity to fund DHS
question.
without a month shutdown.
La congresista Jayapal hizo un gran trabajo en esta audiencia. Miren, por favor.
Do you know, Mr. Vogt, how many of the largest corporations in America paid absolutely nothing in federal income tax in 2025?
Not off the top of my head, but our view is that the tax policy.
Well, let me just tell you, Mr. Vogt, reclaiming my time. Let me just tell you the number of corporations, large corporations that paid absolutely zero in federal tax was 88 at least that we know of, including Tesla, which paid zero on almost $5.7 billion of income, as well as Coinbase, Citigroup, CVS Health, and Palantir.
Ahora, el miembro demócrata de mayor rango, es decir, el líder de los demócratas en el Comité de Presupuesto, que es el congresista Boyle, escuchen lo que tuvo que decir, escuchen su interrogatorio.
Said that single piece of legislation adds more to our deficit and debt than any other piece of legislation passed by Congress in American history. In addition to the over $4 trillion it adds to our national debt, it eliminates healthcare coverage for more than 15 million Americans, according to the CBO. The Kaiser Family Foundation says it's actually more than 17 million Americans who will lose their healthcare. Are they really all, according to you? Really? You're going to sit here with a straight face and say they're all illegals, they were all defrauding the system? That's actually your position?
Yes. With regard to the people that have lost that.
I mean, that's laughable. I'm sorry. I'll give you a chance to respond.
You had a number of issues with regard to your comments there.
Wait. Let me
number one.
Sorry. Wait. Well, reclaiming my time. I just want to be clear. I'm citing. We acknowledge the CBO figure. That's where I'm getting the 15 million from, and the Kaiser Family Foundation says 17 million. You're saying none of them are legitimately on this, even though we had one of them actually testify before us.
I didn't say all of them are illegals. I said there's also the benefit of people returning to the workforce because they're able-bodied individuals, or they should not have been on the system regardless because of the inability to address fraud in the aftermath of.
Okay, so they're all either illegals or defrauding the system.
Well, that's certainly not a provocative statement that we have fraud all over the country, is it, Mr. Ranking Member?
I imagine there are fraud in all sorts of private and public sector areas, but the idea that 15 million Americans are about to lose their health care, the single biggest loss of health care in American history, mind you, not even during the Great Depression, did 15 million Americans lose their health care coverage. The idea that all of those people who are about to lose their health care are defrauding the system or are illegal immigrants, that is not supported by any facts whatsoever.
Are now working and getting the benefit of a job with employer-sponsored healthcare coverage. Look, these assessments by CBO and others are often very static.
It's right of center groups as well. Reclaim my time. I only have a few minutes, so excuse me. But it's not just CBO. I mean, right of center groups, left of center groups, nonpartisan groups. You're saying they're all wrong.
I am saying that the budget community typically relies on static thinking, static scoring, current law baselines. And so you don't get an accurate picture of the extent to which the reforms that are being made are going to have a dynamic impact with better programs, more healthcare, for instance, $50 billion.
Let me, before you get to the friends, I only have a couple minutes.
No es absurdo, eso es lo que afirman, que 15 millones de personas están cometiendo fraude. Por eso tuvieron que quitarles el Medicaid, el Medicare y la seguridad social a 15 millones de personas. Porque todos son estafadores, dicen ellos. Y esto lo dice el régimen de fraude y criminales de guerra. Donald Trump, un delincuente literal, un fraude literal, es el tipo que va a decir, bueno, creo que cualquiera en Medicaid y Medicare está cometiendo fraude. Son seres humanos verdaderamente enfermos. Aquí tenemos más de la congresista Valint y vamos a reproducirlo. Miren, por favor.
Now to wasteful government spending, particularly the $350 billion set aside for this, yes, war of choice against Iran, included in this president's budget. His budget asked for a shocking surge in Pentagon spending, up to $1.5 trillion. We have never in the history of this country seen spending like this, paid for by slashing healthcare, education, and housing. Donald Trump has said, as my colleagues have said earlier, we're fighting wars here. We can't take care of daycare. Mr. Vote, yes or no, is $350 billion for the war in Iran lowering costs for Americans? Those Americans who ask us in every single town hall why they can't afford to live in this country. Is the war lowering costs for Americans?
It is certainly not defunding childcare. We fully fund childcare in this budget.
Is it lowering costs for the American people?
But doesn't that get at the premise of your question?
You can find money for illegal wars in Iran. You can find money for all the pet projects of this administration, and yet we can't find money to alleviate the costs of food and housing and gas on the home front. But according to you,
fully funded childcare, fully funded Head Start.
Mr. Vote, with the money that is set aside in this budget, the additional funding for the war in Iran, $350 billion, we could fund the ACA tax credits for 10 years. For a decade.
¿Cómo es posible que podamos seguir gastando dinero en guerras extranjeras y sin embargo no podamos encontrar una solución al hecho de que la gente no puede pagar su atención médica? Y de nuevo, para cerrar, solo quiero decir, el pueblo estadounidense no está enojado porque nos están quitando el poder. El pueblo estadounidense está quitado porque le están quitando el poder al pueblo.
To spend money on foreign wars, and yet we cannot find a solution to the fact that people can't afford healthcare. And again, in closing, I just want to say again, we're not so angry because you're taking our power. We're angry because you are taking the people's power. I yield back.
The gentlelady's time has expired. If the gentleman wants to respond.
I would just say this president has been a person who has campaigned and led for peace and against endless wars. Is it peace through war? Is that where we are right now?
Ms.
Peace
Fallon,
through war?
I'm giving our witness the time to respond to your question, and then I'm going to yield 5 minutes to Mr. Estes. So finish the response uninterrupted, and then let's go to Mr.
The president has also been equally clear that he is not going to allow a nuclear Iran. He is not going to allow them to have nuclear weapons. He is not going to allow them to have missiles and a navy that impacts our national security. And so he is doing what is necessary to keep us safe while at the same trying to pursue diplomacy so that we can get out of wars and lower those costs over time.
Esta fue una gran línea de interrogatorio sobre los Institutos Nacionales de Salud, el NIH. Miren, por favor.
Your direction, Mr. Vote, at the National Institutes of Health. Last year, grants for Alzheimer's and aging research were cut almost 50%. Mental health, 47%. New grants for cancer research, 23%. And as I read the budget that you're here presenting today, the Trump regime's response is that medical research has not yet been cut sufficiently. Doesn't your budget propose another 12% cut at the National Institutes of Health?
Most of what you said is untrue. NIH was not cut at all last year. We proposed a series of reforms to lower the cost. We continue, although not as much, to lower the cost
Reclaiming
this
my
year.
time, my question to you is, don't you propose to cut the National Institutes of Health by another 12%?
We propose to have a cut to the National Institute of Health.
Thank you, sir.
That
Reclaiming my
that
time.
goes after specific
far as the-
programs.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
and
Reclaiming my
institutes like the
time.
Minority
Let's talk
Health
about your-
Disparity Institute.
Reclaiming
like
my
the
time,
Fogarty
Mr. Chairman. If the gentleman will please yield, he can filibuster when he's in the Senate.
Gentleman
What we
reclaims his
do
time.
know, as far as the truth, is that there were fewer grants for new cases last year at NIH than at any time in the last 30 years. Is it your feeling in proposing further cuts at NIH that there are just not enough worthwhile projects out there, or that we cannot afford to invest more in doing something about Alzheimer's, cancer, Parkinson's, HIV, other dread concerns?
There are many worthy health investments out there. I think post-COVID, for an institution that contributed to the pandemic itself with the funding of gain-of-function research, to give that institute $42 trillion, which is more than it got under the COVID pandemic, the kinds of is very generous. The kinds of things that we're trying to do with the National Institute of Health, indirect cost rates. We don't think when Bill Gates gives 10%
Yes, sir.
for parkings and administrative
Reclaiming
costs
my time, Mr.
and
Chairman.
buildings, that should go.
Reclaiming my
reclaims his
time.
time.
After giving last year fewer grants than at any time in the last 30 years, you are proposing further cuts there. And of course, the cuts are not only to medical research, But is it correct that in your budget, you would cut the National Science Foundation, which has in the past provided grants that helped on artificial intelligence, on laser eye surgery, on MRI technology, among others, that you propose to cut it by 55%?
We have a sizable cut to National Science Foundation.
Over half of the funding.
But it will not impact our investments on artificial intelligence.
Well, that's good to know, because you may be the only person, along with President Trump, who believe that. A reading from the director of a consortium of research universities, he says your budget cuts are the equivalent of working in a company that feels like it's on the verge of bankruptcy. Another one says slow scientific progress threatening the nation's position in the world economy.
Aquí tenemos más del senador Kane sobre los aranceles.
Second question, I was interested in the revenues in the budget that you've sent over. One revenue in particular interested me was tariffs, what you're assuming for tariffs. You can see that the numbers on tariffs were sort of bumping around at less than $100 billion a year, $100 billion in 2022, $195 billion in 2025, when the tariffs started to kick in IEEPA. Tariffs have been determined to be illegal by the Supreme Court, the IEEPA tariffs. Next week, you're starting to refund $166 billion of tariffs. So I was interested to see what your tariff projection was going to be. And actually what I see is, far from going down as you're refunding illegal tariffs, you're predicting dramatic increases in tariffs. What is President Trump going to tax next?
Senator, what you're looking at is we had 10-year assumptions for the IEEPA tariffs, and those should be shaded a different way. Obviously, the Supreme Court changed our strategy on that, and we are going through a process to replace those, but we do not believe that the tariffs will be less than under IEEPA.
So if you're going through the process, tariffs are a tax. I'd like to introduce, Mr. Chair, two documents from the New York Federal Reserve. 90% of the cost of the tariffs last year fell on American consumers and businesses, and another from the Tax Foundation. The average in 2025 was $1,000 per American tax household, if I could introduce them.
Objection.
So you're going through a process to decide, what are you going to tax next? Who are you going to tax next to reach these astronomical tariff numbers?
We don't think they're a tax on the American people. They have not raised prices.
90% of the cost is falling
by
on
a tax foundation
consumers.
paper that doesn't support tariffs.
But who are you going to impose the tariffs on next?
Look, tariffs are imposed on the foreign importers, right? We've seen that they don't impact.
What industry sectors are you going to hobble? Do you know
yet? It's
yet?
not hobbling. It's ensuring that we have American manufacturing.
So I'm assuming you don't know. You don't yet know who the next tariffs are going to hit. You're just projecting all this money is coming out of American pockets.
Senator, have been out there ever since Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. Yeah, that's the one that you did right before Tax Day that took $1,000 out of American families' pockets. Let me go to the next.
So I was just trying to figure out, where could I find a needle large enough to burst the bubble that you guys live in? Because you're not living in reality. And you're creating a narrative, and just because you say it, you think it's true. And so I've sat up here and I've listened to a whole bunch of explanations that don't in any way, shape, or form relate to reality. I got a couple of questions to ask you, sir. I'm going to start with one that's going to give you a moment to speak, and then I'm going to ask you a series of yes and no's. And when I say yes or no's, I want yes or no's. What would you say right now to the mothers of the kids who died because of your dismantling of U.S. aid? Harvard study says there are more than 100,000 of them. Can you give me a quick response to what you would say to those mothers? Just don't talk to me about the study. Talk to me about what you would say to the mothers of the children who died.
Congressman, with great respect, I would just contest that the extent to which institutions that benefit from federal largesse put out studies that say that the world has ended, that the world has not in fact ended.
Well, it's going there.
We only cut
if you're not
USAID spending last year to the tune of about $8 billion. There was far more that we could have done, Congressman.
Reclaiming my time. If a mother came before you who told you that her child died because she didn't have access to health care or medicine that usually would be available because of the kindness of the United States of America, that you and this administration have eliminated, would you have anything of empathy, compassion, and humanity to say to her? Would you say to her, I am sorry, that was a mistake?
I always have empathy for individuals, including those that get improper and false information from the media that pumps this false and ignorant information out to the American people.
You know, I am so sorry to hearing false, fraud, and abuse from any of my colleagues and even from you. Because if we wanted to eliminate abuse and fraud, we'd eliminate the President of the United States from the office right now and the rest of the sycophants in his administration that are allowing him to do so many illegal things.
Y de la congresista Hayapal sobre la protección al consumidor.
Now, let me turn to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, since you're also the acting director there. This was an agency that was established to protect consumers from financial predation, deception, fraud, and abuse from the biggest banks, biggest corporations. And the CFPB has stepped in and really done that work under the last administration. CFPB put real money back in consumers' pockets, returned over $21 billion to consumers who were cheated or scammed by big banks, giant corporations. It ordered Wells Fargo to pay over $2 billion and Bank of America to pay $727 million to consumers who were harmed. But you have a mission to eliminate the CFPB. Why are you protecting big corporations instead of consumers, Mr. Vogt?
I'm not. CFPB caused $350 billion of added costs on consumers.
Mr. Vogt, you are asking to reduce the CFPB's workforce to just 1/3 of its 2025 level, which means that the department that oversees the banks and other financial companies that hold trillions of dollars in mortgage, auto, credit card, and student loan debt would drop from 500 employees to just 77, and the enforcement department would only have 50 workers. What do you have to say to the millions of service members, veterans, older adults, and students that are seeing costs rise? And now, because of your unprecedented rollback of consumer protection staff, have nobody at the agency that is actually policing those big corporations that are scamming consumers.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
Por favor, amigos, díganme lo que ustedes piensan en los comentarios. Me pareció un gran interrogatorio que los expuso. 1.5 billones de dólares y la forma en la que lo dice con tanta indiferencia. Ese dinero podría gastarse en la salud, podría hacerse más accesible la vivienda, la educación más accesible. Podrían utilizar todo ese dinero en mejorar la vida de las personas, pero en lugar de eso se está gastando para comprar más misiles, para seguir acabando con la vida de personas en otro país, en una guerra que no le compete a Estados Unidos. El pueblo estadounidense está harto de este régimen asqueroso y despreciable que francamente no son servidores públicos, simplemente son personas que están buscando su propio beneficio y robándole todo el dinero al país. Pero bueno, amigos, déjenme saber lo que ustedes piensan. Como siempre les he dicho, para mí lo más importante es su opinión y me encantaría leerlos en los comentarios. Les recuerdo que si les gusta contenido de política estadounidense, les va a encantar suscribirse al canal, ya que subo videos como estos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarlos diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.